What's going on, everyone? We are live on YouTube, back for another best ball draft. Going to be drafting on DraftKings today. Been mixing in some DraftKings best ball drafts. I usually prefer drafting on underdog, but I am usually thinking also in a PPR mindset. So going to be doing some DraftKings drafts on the live stream today. About to go live here on TikTok as well. And we're going to join right now. Let me pull up this on the stream. We're going to enter into the $10 tournament contest. Going to try to max enter this contest. We'll see if I quite get there. We'll get to some of the comments. Great to see you, Shizuto, in the YouTube live. Appreciate you hopping in right away. This is going to be a fun one. I'm starting to feel the momentum build in some of these best ball drafts, guys. I think I'm really getting into form. I really think I've got the ADPs, the values, and the stacking. It's all down. I'm a little over 100 drafts in at this point, and I'm ready to go, guys. I'm ready to go. I'm going to win one of these first place prizes. We are live on TikTok and YouTube. You can see a live draft. If you're watching live on TikTok, I'll be doing a live draft over on YouTube. About to fill up. It's going to be a draft on DraftKings. Going to get to some of these comments in the YouTube live as well in just a second. Appreciate all of you in the YouTube live. In the TikTok live, guys, I have a little picture up next to me of how I started a recent underdog draft. This was maybe just a few days ago, this draft I did on underdog. I had the 5th overall pick. I think the 5th overall pick is my favorite pick in fantasy football this year after this draft. If it's going to go like this, it's going to be my favorite pick in fantasy football this year. It looks like I'm getting, what pick did I get here? I'm the 9th pick in this draft. Don't really love that. We'll see how it goes though. Can still work my way out of it. Just doing a live draft over on YouTube. You can see the draft board over on YouTube. Link is right in the bio if you're watching live on TikTok. But yeah, this draft, I started with the 5th overall pick. This is a half PPR league, 12-team league. This is a 12-team league I'm drafting in that I have up on TikTok right now. I started Cooper Kupp at number 5. I've been taking him as early as number 2. Probably as we get closer to the season, he'll fall in the number 3 or 4 slot for me in fantasy drafts. Absolutely love getting him at number 5, though. If he has a fully healthy season, Cooper Kupp's finishing as a top 3 wide receiver in all formats, especially PPR leagues, though. He's really one of 2 players in the league that you can bank on 10 targets every single week, at least. There's no one really behind him on the Rams. And then this year, with how crazy people are going with receivers, especially in these best ball drafts, we'll see if that sticks for the season-long redraft leagues. I got Saquon Barkley in the late 2nd round with my 2nd pick, and then Derrick Henry is sitting there in the 3rd round. I basically got 3 first-round picks on this team. I mean, absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Saquon may sit week 1. Yeah, so this was before, that news broke. Obviously, we'll see with that. We're still a ways away from the season. Saquon and Josh Jacobs are both at risk of holding out right now. Certainly something for me to think about as I'm doing these early drafts. We are live on YouTube right now, by the way, at WalterPicks on YouTube, or go to the link in the bio on TikTok. Draft literally is starting right now. You can see the draft board. I'm in a live draft right now. Justin Jefferson just went with the 1st overall pick. This is a real draft, $10 draft with a chance at a $1 million first place prize. It's a best ball draft, a little bit different than redraft leagues, but still gives you a good sense of where the average draft positions and guys are going, generally speaking, especially positionally. Jamar Chase went with the 2nd overall pick, then CMC goes 3rd overall. The DraftKings is a little bit different than the underdog drafts that I do more of. It's PPR scoring on DraftKings, and there's bonuses. If you go over 300 passing yards or 100 rushing or receiving yards, you get bonuses for that as well. So really, you want guys that can hit those marks. Okay, let me get to some of these comments in the YouTube after my first pick. Again, I had the 9th overall pick in this draft. I'm doing live on YouTube right now. Early Super Bowl prediction. God, I haven't really thought through my early Super Bowl prediction. I got to decide if I'm gonna, get crazy with it or not. I probably won't. I feel like I predicted the Chiefs like each of the last 5 years, and that was only right one, maybe twice out of the last 5 years. It's just hard to pick anyone but the Chiefs. The AFC is so brutal though, that I feel like so brutally competitive this year that I feel like there could definitely be a decent amount of teams. All right, let's see. We're on the clock here in this draft. Definitely, it's a tough spot here. My rankings are saying Bijan. The ADP is saying AJ Brown. I am going to go with Bijan Robinson with my first pick in this one. I haven't gotten a ton of him yet in these early drafts. So I'm going with Bijan. I'm doing a live draft over on YouTube, by the way. If you're watching live on TikTok, come to the YouTube live. You can see the draft board literally pick by pick as it's happening. Gives you a sense of where guys are going right now. I have a screenshot here of a recent draft I did. Probably my favorite start to a draft that I've had. There is some risk with Saquon holding out. I don't think it's super likely, but it is a possibility for sure. All right, let's get to some of these comments. Shizuto, you're the first one in here, so I'll get to yours first. I get Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, trade away Zach, Charbonnet, Mooney, Swift, and first round 2024 rookie pick. Dynasty is tough. You're giving up a lot of young assets there, but I'm generally in the win now mode in Dynasty almost all the time because I know Dynasty leagues don't actually last forever. That's a little secret, by the way, for Dynasty. They don't actually last forever. They last for as long as the league members keep going. My first Dynasty league, I think, lasted 2 years. That was pretty disappointing. And I like winning. So I'm fine going with Devontae and Aaron Jones. I think both those guys will help you win this season if you're in a win now mode. Who do you think is the most underrated QB in fantasy? Yeah, I think Brock Purdy is definitely on the list. He just feels like he's got so much injury baked into his price right now when all the reports are that he's almost definitely going to be ready for week 1. I mean, look how far down he is on this list. He's behind Bryce Young and Kenny Pickett and Jordan Love and Matthew Stafford. I would take him ahead of all of those guys with the weapons that he has. So he definitely stands out to me as the most underrated. I also think Mac Jones is maybe in the conversation as the most underrated because he's just so overhated right now. Everybody hates Mac Jones. Nobody has any faith in Mac Jones at all. And I think that's probably a mistake with how bad of an offensive situation he had last year. And I'm going to go Nick Chubb here with my second pick. Going to pass on Garrett Wilson. Going to pass on Saquon Barkley. He's been starting to slip a little bit, with these recent reports about a potential holdout. And it's a tough situation all around with the Saquon Barkley situation. Who's going to be the best preseason team? Oh, man, we're not getting into that type of conversation yet. But the Jets on Hard Knocks, that's going to be a fun time. All right, 8-man league. What's the best draft slot? I really like draft slot 5. And if you're watching live on TikTok, you could see why. Again, there's some risk here with Saquon maybe holding out. I still don't think it's super likely. But at the 5th overall pick in this draft that I did earlier this week on Underdog, this is a 12-team league. You're talking about an 8-man league. But I got Cooper Kupp with the first pick and then followed up with Saquon and Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry in the 3rd round is absolutely insane, if you ask me. What's up, Sam? Good to see you. Kylo, great to see you as well, man. The season is on the cusp. I'm starting to get in my zone when it comes to these best ball drafts, and I really feel like I'm going to hit on one of these this year. Who would you take 1 overall? Still CMC. Yeah, so I'm going to be posting, for sure, a video about this, and I'll probably post a video similar to last year about how I just think the first round in PPR league should go in general. I don't think it's CMC at 1. I do think he should be in the conversation at 1 overall, but right now I'm on the Justin Jefferson bandwagon at 1 overall. I think he's the safest pick in all of fantasy football, and arguably is the best start to a wide receiver career we've ever seen. So I'm in on Justin Jefferson at 1, especially in PPR formats. I think McCaffrey has a really good argument to be at 1 as well, though. And at number 2, you should be considering him. I personally think I'd be taking McCaffrey over Jamar Chase. I also think I might be taking Cooper Kupp over Jamar Chase in PPR league. So I feel like I might not get that much Jamar Chase, which is a little disappointing with how high he's going. You see in this draft, he went 2nd overall. Hey, Sam, what's your thoughts on Cam Akers this season? Yeah, I'm really starting to warm up to Cam Akers at his price. I think there's a path there. He feels like a better version of James Conner to me this year, a little bit younger, a little bit less tread on his tires. Obviously, he's looked really, really bad last year coming off the Achilles, but he looked really good down the stretch. And I'm hopeful that that's what's going to continue into this season. And there's just similar to James Conner, nothing behind him when it comes to the depth chart right now. It's worth calling out, though. And I think the Rams are one of these teams that maybe could make sense for one of these veteran running backs that's still out there. Leonard Fournette, Kareem Hunt, Ezekiel Elliott, one of those 3 guys. I think the Cardinals, the Rams, there's one other team today I was looking at, I think could make a lot of sense that people aren't really thinking about. The Browns. I think the Browns also could sign one of those guys. They've lost Kareem Hunt. They have Jerome Ford in right now. But yeah, Cam Akers went over 13 fantasy points every single game in the last month of the season last year. He actually ended the year playing a game 100% of the snaps, 21 carries in that game. He ran 23 routes too in 2 of his last 3 games last year. I think he has a chance to have a legitimate 20-plus touch type of opportunity with the Rams. The scary part, though, with Cam Akers and with James Conner, to an even further extent with James Conner, is like, can these offenses not implode? Can these offenses sustain drives and score points throughout the season? I think both these teams are at risk of really just having an atrocious season all around. Can you say VH Fantasy Football 2024? Hudson, how's it going? Yeah, don't spam. Don't spam. We're not going to reward spamming, especially in the YouTube live. I have a question about Underdog. Can I DM you? Alex, I think my DMs are open, but also ask in the comments. I'm happy to answer any question about Underdog. Always around to chat some Underdog strategy. All right, I'm about to be back up on the clock. I'll come back to the comments in just a second here. And we started RB, so I really got to be looking at the wide receivers here. This is the thing I don't like about taking Nick Chubb is I feel, part of me wants to go Brees here. Part of me really wants to go Brees. We're not going to do it. We're going Ridley. I feel like I've been cooling off Ridley a little bit. I was really into him when I started doing these drafts, but I do like mixing him in as well. People are drafting Christian Kirk higher on DraftKings than on Underdog, but my money's still on Ridley. Between these two guys, I think it's a good debate, similar to the Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy debate from last offseason. Two guys on the same team. There's a lot of optimism around the team in general heading into the season. Calvin Ridley or Christian Kirk? Which guy do you want more in fantasy football? It's easier to say Christian Kirk, I think, because he's going like about a round later, and we just saw him have a good season. And we haven't seen Calvin Ridley play in a while. But guys, Calvin Ridley's very, very good. Calvin Ridley could be a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy football. Christian Kirk cannot be a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy football. I don't think he has the same type of ceiling as Calvin Ridley, and especially in these tournaments that I'm drafting in on DraftKings. That's all I really care about, ceiling outcome. I think people underweight that a little bit. All right. We are back on the clock here. Man, Jahmyr Gibbs got snagged. I was actually going to consider him there, I think. I still kind of want to go Brees here, but I also want to go a second receiver. I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to go hyper fragile running back build, and I'm going to take Brees here with my 4th pick. So I started this pick. I had the 9th, started this draft. I had the 9th overall pick in this draft. You can see it live on YouTube, by the way. If you're watching live on TikTok, come to the YouTube live. There's a draft board being filled out live on the screen right now. And I started this pretty RB heavy. I started with Bijan Robinson with my first pick, Nick Chubb in the 2nd round. I can't stop hitting the button on Nick Chubb in the 2nd round. I think he's probably my favorite 2nd round pick in fantasy football right now. The floor is just so high for Nick Chubb. What is the worst case scenario for Nick Chubb? Probably he finishes as a back end RB1. He's been a top 10 running back in fantasy points per game in PPR leagues for 4 consecutive years. And now there's no Kareem Hunt. And now there's a legitimate quarterback starting for the Browns with a full offseason to get prepared. I mean, there's a really good offensive line he's running behind. There's talks that he's going to be used more as a receiver. I'm really high on Nick Chubb right now. I think he should be going in the 1st round. I think he will go in the 1st round in most redraft leagues as we get closer to those. So yeah, I can't stop taking him in the 2nd round. Honestly, as you look at the 2nd round here in this draft, CeeDee Lamb, I honestly think I'd prefer Nick Chubb over CeeDee Lamb. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think I'd prefer Nick Chubb there too. And pretty much everyone taking after him. You know, obviously I took him before all these guys. I feel pretty good about Nick Chubb where he's going. I think I would prefer Nick Chubb to AJ Brown even too. Best wide receiver season, and he had 22 points per game. CMC for upside, Chase for reliability. Yeah, it's definitely close. Alexander, it's definitely close. Nick Chubb is certainly the safest 2nd round pick with a high ceiling. Bears at WalterPicks. How are we doing, man? Cup, CMC, or Chase at 2? Yeah, so Chase is the guy that's been going most frequently at number 2 in the drafts that I have seen. I would personally go CMC at 2, and then I would go Cup, and then I would go Chase, especially if it's a PPR league. Half PPR, I think there's a better argument for Chase over Cup and maybe over CMC too, but I'm in on CMC in the top 2. I think Jefferson should be the number 1 pick. But I think CMC and Justin Jefferson, that should be the debate about who's the number 1 overall pick. I don't think there's really anyone else in the conversation this season. All right. I can leave Gibbs. I can land Gibbs, Mixon, Jones, Walker in the 3rd, 4th if I go wide receiver heavy in the first 2 rounds. Yeah, 100% you can. And I think I'm going to go Chris Godwin here ahead of McLaurin and ahead of Ayuk. Actually, I see this Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley stack, and I'm not gonna turn that down. I'll go one of these guys with my next pick. Again, I'm doing a live draft over on YouTube at WalterPicks. Link is in the bio as well if you're watching live on TikTok. Had the 9th overall pick. Like how the draft is starting overall so far. Let's get back to some of these comments, though. I will actually get back to some of the comments once I take my next pick. Thoughts on Stevenson? Yeah, Ramondre Stevenson's a really interesting case this year because it feels like for the longest time, everyone has been sort of in on the be careful drafting Patriots running backs type of mentality. And that might be shifting a little bit this year. Mondre is pretty clearly going to be the RB1 for the Pats. We know he's a good receiving back too. But I don't think Mondre has a path to being this workhorse level running back that you really want in fantasy football. And there's definitely some real concerns still just around the Patriots offense overall. But I like him because he catches passes. And I do think he's going to get like 15 to 20 touches a game. I just don't think he's one of these guys that's going to get much past that. I don't think he's going to get like a 70% plus snap share this season or 70% plus opportunity share. I think he will get a lot of the high value touches though in this offense, especially with Damian Harris gone. All right, we're going to go Chris Godwin here with the next pick. I have been going Chris Godwin a decent amount in these drafts. I really like where he's going to. I just got him. What round are we in now? 6. I just took him in the 6th round in a PPR league. I get that he's downgrading from Brady to Baker Mayfield, but the Bucs are going to have to throw a lot still this season. And I'm pretty out on Mike Evans with how his season went last year. I just thought the consistency was really poor from Mike Evans. He had a couple massive games, and he still will likely get to 1,000 yards like he's done for basically 10 straight seasons now. But I think Chris Godwin's floor and ceiling are still considerably higher than Mike Evans, again, especially in PPR formats. Do you think Ridley is a risky pick for a wide receiver 1? Yeah, definitely a risky pick. 100% Dalton, risky pick for your wide receiver 1. But with great risk, you better be getting some big reward, right? This is what fantasy football is all about. It's a risk reward analysis. It's a ceiling floor outcome type of analysis. And when you're looking at Calvin Ridley, I mean, I think the risk is worth it. I do. I think the risk is worth it in the 3rd and 4th round for Calvin Ridley. I was talking about that a little bit earlier. You see Christian Kirk went like just about a full round after. And I think Christian Kirk is, arguably a little bit safer. We kind of know what his role is going to be like. I trust Trevor Lawrence to give Christian Kirk, similar type of volume as he got last season. He's getting a lot of deep targets, which is valuable. But I think Ridley's ceiling in this offense is considerably higher than Christian Kirk. I don't think Christian Kirk has an outcome where he's a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy football. Ridley absolutely has that outcome. We've already seen it from him. I know it's tough because we haven't seen him play in a long time, but he's fully healthy. All reports are he's in great shape. He's already meshing with Trevor Lawrence this offseason. And I think he's going to have a big role for the Jacksonville Jaguars this season. And I think that's a big reason why I'm in on Trevor Lawrence taking another leap forward this year. When are you going to do sleeper drafts? They're coming. They're coming like very soon. I actually think I'm going to be pivoting from best ball to sleeper mock drafts much earlier this year. Actually, like kind of in retrospect, looking back to what I did last year, I think I was in too much of a best ball mentality by the time redraft came around that actually ended up hurting me in my season-long leagues because it's a different mentality. Best ball is a lot about roster construction and a lot about getting the spike weeks on your team and drafting for best case scenarios, and a lot about stacking. And season long is a lot more about consistency. I need guys in my season long leagues that are going to get me consistent weeks, consistent wins in my lineup, a lot less about the spike weeks a little bit in season long leagues. Still, there's big upside that you want to consider in season long leagues. But yeah, I'm going to be doing probably the sleeper drafts in the next couple of weeks. Probably by mid-August, I'll only be doing season-long mock drafts. So within the next month, I think I'll scale back the best ball drafts and really be grinding the mock drafts on Sleeper. And all of you guys will be able to join in on those. Thoughts on Swift? Yeah, I like Swift in this best ball format a little bit. I don't know if I'm going to have too much of him in season-long because I think there's going to be a real rotation in that Eagles backfield, just like we saw last season with Miles Sanders and the other backs in Philadelphia. I think Kenneth Gainwell is going to be involved, and Rashad Penny also got signed this offseason. I think he'll be involved. And Boston Scott, guys. Boston Scott's going to get some goal line touches for sure as well, especially when he plays the New York Giants. So I think that from a season-long fantasy perspective, I'll probably be out on Swift. Of course, it matters where he goes. I think from a best ball perspective, though, I'm more in on him and willing to consider him in this format. And yeah, I'm going to go Pitts here. I don't like taking Pitts and Bijan, though. I really don't love that, but let's look at the tight ends. Yeah, like look at the drop off here in tight ends. I have to take Kyle Pitts. I have to take Kyle Pitts. I was actually talking to the WalterPicks creators in Slack today about Kyle Pitts. I'm talking myself back into Kyle Pitts when he slides in drafts like this. We're deep into the 7th round at this point. Kyle Pitts is sitting there, and the next best tight end on the board is Evan Ingram. I do have Trevor Lawrence, so that might not be the worst stack here in a best ball format. But Kyle Pitts versus Evan Ingram, I mean, they're night and day different for fantasy football. I mean, I'll take Kyle Pitts 100 times ahead of Evan Ingram, and I think the drop off there is just really massive, guys. Kyle Pitts was number 2. A tight end in air yards. He was top. I actually think he was number 5 in air yards. He missed some games. He was number 1 in air yards share. You look at his target rate. I mean, he's basically a wide receiver playing tight end. And the reason people are so down on Kyle Pitts is he just hasn't been scoring touchdowns. He hasn't been producing fantasy points because he hasn't been scoring touchdowns. But guys, the thing that correlates most to touchdowns is targets and air yards, which he's already shown in the first 2 years of his career that he can earn at really an elite level. So I'm in on Kyle Pitts if he's going to be going this late in drafts. So we're looking at a wide receiver here again. I think I'm going to go Marquise Brown. He's top in ADP and top in my rankings. I don't hate either of these 3 guys that are top in the rankings here right now for me. Michael Thomas, Treylon Burks, but I like Marquise Brown a lot, and I also like how late I can stack him with Kyler Murray in some of these drafts, especially if I'm going to do a 3 QB build. Breece Hall bounce back post injury. I'm in on the Breece Hall bounce back post injury. I'm all the way in, I think, on the Breece Hall bounce back. I actually drafted him in this draft that I'm doing right now live on YouTube. You can come watch the draft board on the YouTube live. I'll be doing these every single week. And soon I'm going to be transitioning to sleeper mock drafts. This is a best ball draft. It's a real $10 best ball draft over on DraftKings. But I'll be transitioning to mock drafts too. And everyone in the live will be able to join in on those. Okay. Is Kyle Pitts worth taking in PPR? Okay. Now I was just ranting a little bit about that. I don't reach for Kyle Pitts, but the thing is you don't need to reach for Kyle Pitts this year. You don't need to reach for him. Last year, you kind of needed to reach for him. The hype was getting a little bit out of control, but let me talk you into Kyle Pitts. Give me 2 minutes and I will talk you into Kyle Pitts for this year. And I think that the starting point when talking you into Kyle Pitts, it has to be about the cost to get Kyle Pitts in drafts right now. It is cheaper to get him than last year. I drafted him in the back end of the 7th round in a draft I'm literally doing right now. This is a PPR draft on DraftKings. I got him in the end of the 7th round. I drafted him after 6 rounds after Travis Kelce, 4 rounds after Mark Andrews. I drafted him 3 rounds after TJ Hawkinson, 2 rounds after George Kittle, and a full round after Darren Waller, and half a round after Dallas Goedert. So I'm getting him after all of these guys. He is just as big of a ceiling as almost all of those players. If the Falcons just throw a little bit more than they did last year, obviously Bijan's in town now, so that's going to change the dynamic of the offense a little bit. But it's Bijan Robinson will be a focal point of the offense. Drake London, Kyle Pitts are going to be the main guys leading the way in targets. Kyle Pitts has a legit chance to lead the team in air yards. Guys, he had a 33% air yard share last year. That is better than almost all wide receivers. He's the type of guy, also, he was number 2 in average target distance. Like, he's running wide receiver type routes. He was the real reason his target rate was also 34%, which was number 1 in the NFL. It was ahead of Travis Kelce. That was ahead of Mark Andrews. That means he got targeted. He got a target on 34% of the routes that he ran last season. And in comparison to some of these guys going ahead of him, I mean, he's night and day ahead of those guys in terms of volume and opportunity. And that's what matters in fantasy football. And then the last thought I have on Kyle Pitts is you really got to wrap your head around how rare it is to see rookie tight ends succeed in the NFL. We almost never see it. It's almost impossible to succeed as a rookie tight end. Historically, almost none have done it. Kyle Pitts almost broke the all-time rookie tight end receiving yards record when he was a rookie just 2 years ago. And he follows it up with another really impressive season from a peripheral standpoint. He just hasn't scored touchdowns, guys. And the touchdowns are going to come. I feel pretty strongly about that. All right, I'm on the clock here. I don't really love any of these guys. I'm going to go Daniel Jones as a second QB. I feel like I panicked on the clock there just a tiny bit. I don't know if I'll take a third QB now that I have these 2 guys. I do like Daniel Jones with the weapons that he has this year. What's my roster construction at? Yeah, I think I should probably be hitting wide receiver here. I'll probably go with one of these 2 guys with my next pick. I don't really love double. I don't like the overstack either. I do have Trevor Lawrence here, but that's all my thoughts on Kyle Pitts and talking you into Kyle Pitts. It's the cost. It's the elite. I mean, elite peripheral numbers, especially at this point in his career. And we often see tight ends have their breakout seasons in year 3 and year 4. It's a much different career arc than all the other positions. So yeah, I like Kyle Pitts. Who's your 101 Dynasty Superflex? It's got to be Patrick Mahomes. I don't think there's much debate there, honestly. I mean, I guess we could debate maybe a little bit about Justin Jefferson still there, but I mean, I don't think in a Superflex there's a guy more valuable than Patrick Mahomes. I'm kind of surprised Odell's ahead of Rashad Bateman here in the ADP. We have Rashad Bateman pretty well ahead of Odell in the rankings. And I am going to go Bateman here over Odell as my 4th wide receiver on this team. All right, let's get back to some of the comments. Let me pull up the draft board again so you guys can see as the picks are happening on the YouTube live. Again, we're live on YouTube, doing a live draft right now. I had the 9th overall pick. The squad's coming together. I'll recap the squad momentarily. What late round tight ends do you like? Yeah, so Andrew, speaking of how difficult it is to have success as a rookie tight end, Greg Dulcich is quietly coming off of one of the best rookie tight end seasons we've seen in recent history. He averaged, I think, a little over 40 yards per game. And that might not sound like a lot because it's not in the grand scheme of the NFL, but in the grand scheme of rookie tight end seasons, that's like a top 10, probably a top 4 rookie tight end season since the year 2000 in terms of yards per game. That's Greg Dulcich from the Denver Broncos, who really had an abysmal season last year. Sean Payton, one of the first reports we got when Sean Payton entered the building was, wow, this Greg Dulcich guy seems pretty good. That's definitely an encouraging sign. We've seen Sean Payton get the most out of some tight ends, and there's almost no way Greg Dulcich doesn't have a better year in year 2. Like I said, rookie tight ends, it's really an uphill battle. You're learning everything the offensive line needs to know and everything the wide receivers need to know. It's extremely demanding position intelligence-wise and physicality-wise. You got to be able to block and catch. And Dulcich definitely showed the pass catching ability last year. He had 5 games over 10 points last season as a rookie. And he only played in, I think, like 8 games, 10 games. So half of his games, he went over 10 points. I mean, that's not bad for a late round tight end. You're getting him late in season long leagues. I don't even think he's a top 12 tight end in average draft position. He just went actually in this draft in the 11th round. So I'm counting that as a late round tight end for sure. I also have been talking myself into, who's the other late round tight end? Definitely Chigo Okonkwo. Usually he's going, I think, before Dulcich. I like him late too. He's another guy that he really flashed when given the opportunity last year. He just didn't get that much opportunity. He only had 3 games over 15 routes run. All 3 of those games, he went over 10 points. So I'm in on Chig as well. I think those are probably my 2 favorite late round tight ends right now. I can talk myself into Dalton Schultz too, just because that the Texans situation is really unclear. Who's going to lead that team in receiving? It could be Dulcich. Who's your clear number 2 if JJ goes 1? I think it's CMC. It's either CMC or Cooper Kupp, in my opinion. And I'm always talking in PPR terms. It's different this year. In the different scoring systems, I actually think it is a lot different. I think if it's half PPR, I'm probably more likely in half PPR to consider Jamar Chase there at the number 2 pick, because Kupp and CMC, they're getting so many of their points off of targets in receptions, where Chase is really going to bring, that elite upside in terms of touchdowns and yards that matter a little bit more in half PPR and matter even more in non-PPR formats. So the scoring settings matter a ton, I would say. All right, we're back on the clock here. I don't think I'm going to draft another running back this entire draft. I think I'm just going to be really stacking these wide receivers. I'm fine taking Jameson Williams here in a best ball league. People always overrate the start of a NFL season. All that matters is these late weeks in this tournament. Like I need to win this league, but then I need to advance in week 15, 16, and 17. And Jameson Williams is back by then, and I think he's going to have some elite upside in those weeks. I also really like where Rondo Moore has been going in these drafts too, especially in this PPR format. I'm going to go Chig here, though, as long as he doesn't get sniped here 1 pick before me, and get my 2nd tight end. And then I might only stick with 2 tight ends from there too, and then I can really stack up on receivers, and I might end up actually taking a 3rd QB. We will see. Maybe Kyler late if he's sitting there. I kind of do want to go Rondale, but I'm going to go I'm going to go Chig instead and wrap up the tight end position here early in this draft. Still lots of rounds left. You can see, again, this is a best ball format. Best lineup submitted for me automatically at the end of each week. Okay, let's get back to some of the comments here. Who are some of your must drafts for those starting a dynasty league? James, love this question, man. This is a good, we're kind of wrapping up, I feel like, James. The kind of the best time of year to really dig your teeth into dynasty strategy is as we transition into these season-long drafts. There's a bunch of guys I got high up on my list from a dynasty perspective. Let me actually pull up I'm only in one dynasty league, and it's a super strange dynasty league because it's a salary cap league. It's actually really not a dynasty league. We call it a dynasty league, but it's not really. I think like some deep guys, some deep sleepers I like in dynasty startup drafts right now. I really like getting Treylon Burks. I think his talent is being severely underrated, and I'm willing to take bets on guys. The whole dynasty strategy is I want to take bets on young players that can take a big leap forward this year and provide immediate value to go win a championship this year, but are young enough to produce in years to come as well. Another guy that I'm probably going to make a video about in the next few days is Sky Moore. I think Sky Moore is a really good year 2 wide receiver to target. We know year 2 wide receivers in general are really valuable to target in fantasy football and season-long leagues. I think that's even more so the case in dynasty leagues. Sky Moore has a pretty clear path to a kind of significant role in the best offense in the NFL. The Chiefs let Juju walk this offseason. They have Kadarius Toney, who's supposed to be, this alpha wide receiver 1 for everyone dreaming in fantasy football. But meanwhile, Kadarius Toney, guys, he had one game over 50% snap share last season. There's really not much to show he's going to get much above that. So other receivers are going to have to step up in this offense. We did see Sky Moore step up a little bit down the stretch. He scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes has only had positive things to say about him. And you can tell yourself this upside story with Sky Moore, and you don't need to pay really anything to get him in startup drafts right now. So I like Sky Moore late as well. I think Dolch too. We were just talking about Greg Dulcich. I'm really in on Dolch late as well. He's, like I said earlier, he's coming off a top 5 rookie tight end season in the past 2 decades. I don't think people are really realizing the only tight ends that average more receiving yards per game than Greg Dulcich in their rookie season since the year 2000. Kyle Pitts, Evan Ingram. I think that might be the only 2. That literally might be the only 2. Can I see the beginning of draft just got here? Yeah, let me make this pick here, and I'll slide up to the beginning of the draft board in just a second. I think we got to start hammering the wide receivers now. And I'm fine going with Darnell Mooney here. See what this report is about him. Okay, let me slide up to the beginning of this draft board. You can see the beginning is always a little bit more fun to look at anyways. Are you only live on TikTok? Nope, live on TikTok and YouTube right now. I'm doing a live draft on YouTube. And on TikTok, by the way, for all the people watching live on YouTube, shout out to you, by the way. Make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'll be going live on both TikTok and YouTube all the way through draft season, all the way through the entire NFL season. Guys, I'm pumped. I'm starting to get in the zone of draft mode, and I'm pumped. This is the best time of year. It doesn't get better than this. This is peak optimism time of the NFL season, NFL year, and it's peak draft season. We're heading into peak draft season very soon, so I'm pumped. Okay. I just talked about a couple of my must drafts. There's definitely more in there, James. I feel like I could talk. I could make a whole YouTube video about that. That actually might be a good YouTube video idea. If you had to pick one, Debo, Chubb, or Josh Jacobs, who would it be? Yeah, it's got to be Chubb. I think it's got to be Chubb. And I took Chubb in this draft that I'm doing live on YouTube right now. Again, if you're watching live on TikTok, you can see the draft board live on YouTube. You're like a few presses of your finger away from the YouTube live. It's right in the TikTok bio. But I started this draft. I had the 9th overall pick. I went Bijan Robinson in the first round. I actually think am I about to be on the clock here? I got to be careful. Oh no. Oh no. It happened. Hate to see that, guys. Hate to see that. We auto-picked Jordan Love. Definitely not who I would have taken there. Probably would have gone with another receiver. Hate to see it. We certainly need to start queuing up some players. But I'm willing to eat some L's in respect for the live. Okay. And I did want to talk through Nick Chubb, so I'll get back to that in a second. I'm just going to queue up the ADP here for receivers to make sure I'm getting the optimal roster construction going. as we head towards the back end of this draft. But yeah, so I started this draft. I had the 9th overall pick. Started this draft with Bijan Robinson. I followed that up with Nick Chubb in the 2nd round. I can't stop pressing the button on Nick Chubb in the 2nd round. I just feel like the floor ceiling case for Nick Chubb is close to unrivaled. I really think he should be going in the 1st round of all formats, even more so as you get like less PPR formats, half PPR, non-PPR. There's talks, though, that he's also going to be used more as a receiver this year. I think that he's going to be a part of the best Browns offense he's been on, because Deshaun Watson is going to be the best starting quarterback the Browns have had in quite some time. I think the Browns offensive line is in the top 10 of offensive lines. They lost Kareem Hunt this offseason. They've added nobody. I do think the Browns are one of these teams, though, that it would make a lot of sense for them to sign a Leonard Fournette, who's still sitting out there, or an Ezekiel Elliott, who's still sitting out there. I wouldn't be shocked at all if the Browns did that. I also think the Rams and Cardinals are sneaky candidates to sign one of those guys. It sounds like Dalvin Cook is more on the radar of like the Jets or the Dolphins. But Nick Chubb, assuming that they don't sign anyone else, Jerome Ford, you just can't take Nick Chubb off the field very often for Jerome Ford if you're trying to win football games. And Nick Chubb is the worst case scenario for him is like he finishes as a back end RB1. That's his floor, assuming he doesn't get hurt, of course. And all running backs have an extreme risk of injury. Is part of the reason we're seeing all these teams not want to pay running backs, a la Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs, both of which right now are at risk of holding out. And we'll get more clarity on that on Monday to see if either of them get extended by then. But yeah, the best case scenario for Nick Chubb, I think, is close to number 1 overall running back. Like, he's one of the most efficient running backs in the league. He can get to close to 20 touchdowns in his best case scenario for a season. Plus, there's like a story you can tell about him getting more receiving work. I mean, everything's aligning, feels like, for Nick Chubb right now. So yeah, I'm in on him in the 2nd round. He's been one of my most drafted players in these early best ball drafts. Done taking Pitts forever. Yeah, see, this is the thing, though, Alex. This is the thing, and I love seeing comments like this. You see comments like this, for so many different players. Like Michael Thomas is another one. People will say this about. I love seeing comments like this, because if you can get in a draft with enough people that have this mentality, because there's going to be drafts this year, guys, where like over half of your draft has the mentality of, I'm done drafting Pitts. I'm out on Kyle Pitts. Meanwhile, guys, Kyle Pitts has arguably had one of the most impressive starts to a tight end career that we've ever seen. He was a number 3 pick in the NFL draft. He was a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. He was arguably one of the most exciting prospects the NFL has ever seen at the tight end position. He then almost breaks the rookie tight end receiving yard record. He was like 40 yards short from breaking the all-time receiving yard rookie tight end record. Meanwhile, he got an extra game in there from the guy that had the record, which I think was Jeremy Shockey. I'm going to take DJ Chark here with this next pick. And then he follows that up last season. He dealt with some injuries, but he also had some elite peripheral numbers. He led all tight ends in air yard share. He led all tight ends in target rate. He was targeted on almost over a third of his routes. He got the ball thrown his way. Absolutely insane. He really is a wide receiver out there playing tight end, but he hasn't scored touchdowns. And so people in fantasy hate him because he hasn't produced that many fantasy points, because you got to score touchdowns to get these elite tight end seasons in fantasy. But guys, what predicts the touchdowns is the targets, the air yards, the opportunity. And not many guys have the upside case that Kyle Pitts has. So if you're in a draft with people like Alex, if you're drafting against 11 Alexes and you're the 12th guy, guys, take Kyle Pitts in the 7th, 8th round and just forget about the tight end position. And you have a guy that legit has a chance to finish as a top 3 tight end in fantasy. So yeah, I'm in on Kyle Pitts if he's going to slide in some of these drafts this year. And I think he's going to because of people like Alex. All right, 3 running backs, 7 wide receivers. I don't really want another running back. Let's see who's out there. Gus Edwards, not a terrible option. I think I'm going to keep this hyper fragile running back build going though. And Jonathan Mingo, I don't really hate putting him with Chark, but I'm going to go with Rashid Shaheed instead. Is WalterPicks hiring? WalterPicks is not hiring currently. We do our hiring, more so after the NFL season than right before the NFL offseason. But as long as you're following us on socials, you'll know if we ever are hiring anytime soon. Super pumped for the team we have in place heading into this season. Who should I take at pick 9, half PPR, 10-man league? Yeah, these questions are tough. Always tough for me to answer because I don't know who's going to be there at pick 9. But you came to the right place for this question because, look, I had the 9th overall pick in this draft I'm doing live on YouTube right now. I took Bijan Robinson with this. By the way, I didn't even notice this. that I'm looking at this draft board. Justin Herbert went 10th overall, and they followed it up with Keenan Allen in the second round. What is going on? Bobby K29. I got to get more drafts with this guy for sure. If I'm trying to get positive EV in these drafts, someone taking Justin Herbert in the first round and Keenan Allen in the second round. I mean, I get that the stack is nice, but you could have done that a full 3 or 4 rounds after that. After you did that, how do you feel about Eckler this year? I'm feeling like pretty similar to how I felt about him heading into last season. He's not going to get this elite workhorse type role that we'd like to see in fantasy football. That we've seen from guys like Christian McCaffrey, that we could see potentially from a guy like Bijan Robinson, that we've seen from Saquon Barkley, that we've seen from Nick Chubb. Or that we could see from Nick Chubb. We really haven't seen him get this like 3-down role either. But the thing is, Austin Eckler doesn't really need that to finish as the number 1 overall running back in fantasy football, because he has such like his touches. He's not going to get many games close to 30 touches. Like a guy like Saquon Barkley, that could happen. A guy like Christian McCaffrey, that can happen. It's not going to happen for Austin Eckler, but the value in his touches is so high. He's arguably the best red zone running back in the league. Like, so many of his touches are around and in the red zone. I think this offense is going to score a ton of points again. Like, he could lead all running backs in touchdowns, would not be shocking at all. And that's going to make up so much for the loss in touches compared to some of these other running backs. And then also he's just an elite receiving back. Our top 3 projected running backs and targets right now in the WalterPicks app, projections: Christian McCaffrey, number 1. Austin Eckler's right there at number 2. I think Austin Eckler should be a top 8 pick in all PPR formats. And I think you can really argue him in the top 5 for sure. So yeah, I'm in on Austin Eckler just in general. And by the way, number 3, who I'm really starting to talk myself into, and I feel like I haven't drafted enough in these early drafts that I've done, but I'm going to start targeting pretty aggressively. And I actually was about to draft him in this draft, but he got picked before I was expecting, is Jahmyr Gibbs. And he's projected the 3rd most targets among all running backs right now in our projections. And I think that's a pretty reasonable projection for what we know Jahmyr Gibbs to be and the role he's going to be in. I mean, DeAndre Swift, he's going to get that DeAndre Swift role. He's going to have the DeAndre Swift role from last season as a worst case scenario. That's the worst case scenario for Jahmyr Gibbs, is the DeAndre Swift role from last season. Guys, DeAndre Swift was the number 15 running back in points per game last year. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be more efficient with his touches than even DeAndre Swift was. And DeAndre Swift, he had a 15% target share last year. Again, that's worst case scenario for Gibbs, who I think we're projecting closer to like an 18, 19% target share, especially in those early games. Oh, I'm on the clock. Especially in those early games when Jameson Williams is out. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs could have some monster weeks, guys. And my comp for Jahmyr Gibbs coming out of the draft and going into the draft was Chris Johnson, which is also just so exciting from a fantasy football perspective. I know we only had that one huge CJ2K season, if you guys can remember that. And, for those of you not blessed to watch Chris Johnson in his prime, guys, Chris Johnson was, I think, probably the fastest running back I've ever seen play in the NFL. Like, on-field speed, you couldn't really match Chris Johnson's speed. And that's the type of speed that Jahmyr Gibbs has, and he's a better receiver than Chris Johnson was. He might not be as good of a rusher as Chris Johnson was in that CJ2K season. I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get like 20 carries in a game. I don't think he's going to have that type of role. David Montgomery, I also think, is going to have that goal line role. But man, is the upside going to be so massive for Gibbs every week, especially in PPR leagues, especially in these best ball drafts. I'm really starting to talk myself into Jahmyr Gibbs. Where do you take Jerick McKinnon this year? Yeah, he's a really interesting one because Jerick McKinnon just legitimately won fantasy football leagues last year. Like, if you had the confidence to play Jerick McKinnon in fantasy down the stretch in the playoffs, you won your fantasy league, most likely. That's how big of a deal he was down the stretch last year. Let's see if there's any running backs worth taking a stab on here. Not really. I mean, Ty Chandler, we're at around 18 now. I actually don't hate it. We're gonna take a 4th running back. This is a super hyper fragile running back build to begin with, because I spent 3 of my first 4 picks on running backs in this draft, which I like. I like building my roster construction sometimes around how those early rounds start. Especially, I got to tell myself best case scenario stories with these best ball tournaments. I'm competing against hundreds of thousands of teams in this tournament, guys. And the payout structure is so top heavy, where it's $1 million to first if I can come first place in this contest. But then by the time you get to like 10th place, you're looking at like $30K. And that's still a lot of money, obviously, for a $10 draft. But the drop off from 1st to 10th is so colossal that you got to build your teams in best ball around the best case scenarios. This is why stacking makes a lot of sense in best ball too. So yeah, I'm willing to take some risks in terms of roster construction if it gives me a shot at that first place. Like if these 3 running backs I drafted stay healthy, Bijan, Nick Chubb, Breece Hall, I think I have a legit shot at number 1 overall because I'm just going to be so stacked at these other positions. I actually went 3 QBs here too, which I didn't auto pick Jordan Love on this one. I don't think I'm going to take a 3rd tight end. So I actually might mix in Hunter Henry. I don't hate him late. I think the Pats, I can't stop taking the Pats in these best ball leagues. I feel like people are drafting in these best ball drafts, and it makes a lot of sense in redraft leagues. Like I don't think Patriots, I think Ramondre Stevenson is going to be probably the only Patriot drafted in redraft leagues. Like maybe people will end up talking themselves into Juju or one of the receivers as we get closer to the season, or if they sign Hopkins. But people are drafting like the Patriots offense just legitimately doesn't exist because it didn't really exist last year. But they also didn't have an offensive coordinator last year, and they do this year. And they have an offensive coordinator that's already had success with the Patriots. Obviously, that was with Tom Brady. But Bill O'Brien, who's the offensive coordinator this year, when he was successful with the Patriots before, he was running a 2 tight end system. And I think we're going to see a lot of that this year. They kind of were already showing us they were going to do that with their moves this offseason in signing Mike Gesicki. Hunter Henry had some usable weeks in these best ball contests last year. And like I think they're really going to go back to that 2 tight end system that they had with Aaron Hernandez and Gronk back in the day with Bill O'Brien. So I'm in on Gesicki and Hunter Henry late in these best ball drafts. I don't think they're going to have much season-long redraft value, but I like in leagues like this in the best ball contest where I don't have to predict, when their spike weeks are going to come, because I think they are going to come, and I think the Pats offense almost has to take a step forward from last year. Who'd you draft first in standard, McCaffrey or Jefferson? Oh yeah, definitely it's tougher in standard leagues. I feel like to justify Jefferson at 1 overall. I still think I'd probably go Jefferson though. I still think I'd probably go Jefferson over McCaffrey in standard league. I definitely have to think about it more. And I'm also in no standard league, so like I haven't even done this thought process extensively in standard formats. My mind is almost entirely operates in PPR scoring because almost all of my leagues are points per reception scoring. And standard is just a different world to me. Like I think in our rankings too, in the WalterPicks app, by the way, if you haven't checked out the WalterPicks app yet, guys, the new draft tool is out. We haven't publicly announced it yet, but it's out and the rankings are in there. And if you go to the non-PPR rankings versus the PPR rankings, they're way different. And Derrick Henry, flies up the rankings in non-PPR formats, which definitely makes a lot of sense to me intuitively and with how I know the ranking system works on the back end too. But yeah, it's different. It's different in standard leagues. Like I think Derrick Henry should probably be a top 5 pick in standard leagues, and he's going in the 3rd round right now in these PPR formats, which I think is also absurd. But yeah, CMC could be the safer pick in non-PPR leagues, but Jefferson has like this elite TD upside that most receivers don't have too. So like, that's the thing about the standard leagues. It's all about touchdowns, like even more so than these other formats where touchdowns are obviously still really important. But in the standard non-PPR formats, like draft the guys you think could score the most touchdowns. That's basically it. Whichever team scores the most touchdowns each week and in standard is typically going to win the week in the matchup. All right. That's it for this DraftKings draft. Let me wrap up how this team ended up on the YouTube live. Again, we just did a live draft over on the YouTube live. I started the draft. I had the 9th overall pick. I started it with Bijan Robinson, followed it up with Nick Chubb, Calvin Ridley, Breece Hall, Trevor Lawrence, Chris Godwin, Kyle Pitts in the 7th. I'm really, guys, this guy drafted next to me. Again, I really got to get more drafts next to this guy. I mean, he took Gerald Everett right after I took Kyle Pitts. He's really in on the Charger stack, I guess. Let's just keep going on how this draft went for just a second. All right, so I went after the Kyle Pitts pick, I went Marquise Brown, Daniel Jones, Rashad Bateman, Jameson Williams, Chigo Okonkwo in the 12th round. Really like the value there with him in the 12th. Darnell Mooney, Jordan Love, who I auto-picked, definitely wouldn't have taken him there. I don't necessarily hate Jordan Love, but since I already had Trevor Lawrence and Daniel Jones, I don't think that was a worthwhile pick. Kind of wish I went Tyler Algier even, or Kenneth Gainwell, looking at my running back depth right now. DJ Chark, Rashid Shaheed, Tyquan Thornton, Ty Chandler, my 4th running back, 4th and final running back, Greg Dortch. I can't stop taking my favorite guys in like the 19th and 20th rounds right now. I mean, Hunter Henry in the 20th round, I think is absolutely insane. I definitely like the value there. I like Greg Dortch here as well. I've also been really liking Allen Robinson in the 19th, 20th round a lot too. I think he's going to have a pretty pivotal slot role on the Pittsburgh Steelers. He actually went in the 18th here, but I've seen him go as late as the 20th in these drafts too. I'm a keeper league, and I got 5 third-round picks. I don't have a keeper, though. That's interesting. A 10-man PPR, I had the 1.1, and my first 4 picks were Tyreek, Adams, ETN, and Mondres at W. I think that is a W. I don't really understand the Davante Adams ADP a ton right now. I don't really understand it a ton. It feels like we've seen Davante earn just such an elite target share for so many years that people are over panicking about the QB situation just a little bit with Davante Adams. I still think it's a really high floor, high ceiling situation with Davante. All right, guys, that's my time today. I'll be back live, I'm sure, super soon, sometime next week. I actually think Wednesday night next week, I'll be in person with our Patriots creator, Pat. Probably will go live with him as well. And I'll, continue with the daily posting, of course, as well. I think I'm going to get a video out soon about why I like Sky Moore in the last rounds of redraft leagues. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Time is the most valuable thing we have. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I'll be back soon. Good luck, everybody.